Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint tropical nights with acrylics on an 11 by 14 inch canvas. So I will be demonstrating this on an 11 by 14 inch stretched canvas. However, you can do this on any size, any surface. Let's go over brushes and colors. So I used 3 different brushes plus a toothbrush for this. We will be needing a 3/4 inch flat wash brush. These are the Princeton Velvetouch brushes. A 3/8 inch angle brush. These 3 brushes actually come in a pack together that you can get on Amazon. A number 4 round brush, and then a toothbrush for little star specks that you see all throughout the painting. You can just use an old toothbrush and makes for great little sparkles of stars everywhere. And there are 9 colors in this. However, there's a few colors that you can take out if you want to simplify the color palette. These are Liquitex Basics acrylics: Mars Black, Titanium White, Cadmium Orange Hue, Primary Yellow, Hooker's Green Hue Permanent, Phthalo Blue, Turquoise Blue, Burnt Umber, and Burnt Sienna. So you can take out one of the browns. Actually, the Burnt Sienna you can take out if you want to simplify the palette. And if you want to take out the green, you can use the blue and the yellow to make your green, and that'll give you 7 colors instead of 9. I will be drawing some parts of this tutorial with chalk and a ruler, so those 2 things are helpful for this. And for the moon, I actually traced the lid of this paint bottle. It's a 2-inch diameter circle. So find something, you can even use a compass, find something that is about 2 inches in diameter for that circle. Of course, if you're using a different size canvas, you'll need kind of a larger or smaller circle. We're going to go ahead and get started. Since this is a landscape painting, we want to locate where the horizon line is. So I am going to place my canvas in a vertical format. And then at the very top of the painting, I'm going to measure 5.5 inches down and draw a horizontal line across the canvas. These T-square rulers are really helpful for that. So just a pencil, very lightly draw a line. So now we have, now we know where the sky is. So everything above that line is going to be sky. Everything below that line is going to be water, sand, and all the rest of the things in our painting. I'm loading my palette with Mars Black, Phthalo Blue, Titanium White, and I actually added Prism Violet there. That is not a color that I told you we'll be using, but I had this idea of adding purple into the sky. I'm actually not going to add that purple in the sky, but if you wanted to add a little bit of purple in your sky, it actually adds to more of the depth in the painting. Get little pops of purple, which would look pretty. So that one is completely optional. I'm actually not going to use that purple. And so the first thing we want to do is, or the next thing we actually want to do is draw our circle where the moon is going to be. So this is a 2-inch diameter lid. So find something similar, trace it lightly with a pencil, and it's pretty center in the sky. So center on the left and the right, center on the top and the bottom. So just kind of estimate the center and trace that circle. Then use your number 4 round brush and titanium white. You want to paint the circle a solid coat of white paint. So just white. I know it might be kind of silly that we're painting a white canvas area with white, but this is going to be helpful later when we add our texture to our moon and when we start blending colors in the sky. So we want this all to be white. You can take that, you can go all the way over your pencil line to disguise your pencil line. And then we want to paint our first layer in the sky, which is going to be a light blue. Without rinsing your brush, grab a little bit of phthalo blue on your brush and mix it with the white on your palette. So it's going to make kind of a light to medium blue color. Take your blue, your light blue, and you want to start painting a ring around your moon. Still using the round brush. You want to just get there as close as possible to that circle without losing that nice circle shape. So you want to make sure circle stays the same, and you want to start painting outwards in this circular direction. So I went out maybe about 3/4 inches to an inch And then I rinsed my round brush off and grab your 3/4 flat. So we need to start making bigger paint strokes. If we painted this entire sky with that round brush, that would take a long time to do. So this is the 3/4 flat brush. And now I'm going to load it in just the dark blue, that phthalo blue. I'm going to paint a ring around my light blue color. I'm going to start on the outside of it and do a ring, and then without rinsing, grab some white on your brush and go to that transition zone. That's the part where that dark blue and that lighter blue meet together. Grab a little bit of white on your brush and paint over that. It's going to do some wet on wet blending. It's going to blend your light blue with your darker blue. So after you're blending that, we're going to start doing just pure blue. We're going to go out kind of far with this blue. We're going to eventually transition to black. So if you wanted to use that purple, you can take that purple and blend your purple next to the dark blue, or blend that purple in a little bit with that dark blue to give you some purple tones in the sky. I'm going to take a little bit more white. So we want to kind of create this glow. So the moon is super bright, it's a full moon, and it would be the sky around the moon would be brighter than the outer parts of the sky. So that's kind of the effect that we're trying to create here. So I'm taking more of this white and kind of blending it in there before that light blue dries. So we have that kind of light blue glow around the moon. And it's okay if it doesn't blend all the way. So I'm leaving some of these streaks of white in there, and it's not smoothing out, and that's okay. That's going to create kind of what we want in the sky, these sort of moon beams around the moon. And so we want to continue working our way outwards. I'm going to get more phthalo blue on my palette here. Take this and still using the full width of the paintbrush and still going in a circular direction. So I'm running out of the ability to create a full circle at this point, making more of these like half circle arc paint strokes, and that's okay. So I'm just go off the canvas. And it's also okay if you go under your horizon line, or if you completely lose your horizon line. You can always kind of find that later on. I'm going to go almost to the edge of the canvas and stop, and that's when I'm going to start introducing my Mars black. So I'm going to take the Mars black, and I'm going to start on the very end, the edges of the canvas, still going in an arc direction, and fill that area up on the left. So now we have kind of a color block of unmixed dark to blue, and we need to blend that together. So we're going to kind of do what we did earlier, and I'm going to wipe the black off. So the black is a really strong color. You can either rinse the brush or you can wipe it, so we don't have a lot of black on our brush. And then we want to take our blue and we want to work that transition zone of where the black is hitting the blue. We want to take that blue and kind of blend over that area to get that black and blue to blend together. And then you want to repeat that on the other side. So you start with your black, go in that kind of curved direction, grab more blue, either wipe the brush off or rinse it. You just don't want a lot of paint on your brush. I find it easier to blend your colors when your paintbrush is not overloaded with too many colors. I'm going to rinse here because this isn't blending for me. I'm going to rinse my brush, kind of start over. Dry it, and then I'm going to grab just the blue, and I'm actually going to add a little bit of white. Sometimes adding some of that titanium white is really helpful. So see how that blended better because I added just a little bit of white in there. I'm going to do this on this side too. Titanium white is a great color to help you with blending. It will lighten it and kind of give it some gray in there because of the black, but it does help smooth that transition out much better. So wet on wet blending. Some of these white streaks are kind of going out in that dark area, but that's okay. It's creating that effect with the moon that we want. I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to add some more of these white streaks. However, if you want to kind of leave yours alone, if you like the way yours looks, don't over blend it, because then if you keep working it, it'll all just kind of turn the same color. We don't really want that either. I'm just going to do a little bit of smoothing here. I am going to do some texture in the moon. So I'm going to show you how to paint the little craters on the moon, a little different kind of shadowing. So let's rinse our 3/4 flat and set that to the side and get our number 4 round brush back. And we need some fresh titanium white on our palette. And the first thing I want to do is kind of fix my circle, kind of touch it up, especially the outer parts. Make sure the edge of the circle is nice and defined, especially if we accidentally painted some of that blue over our circle. We can kind of fix that, touch that up. And let's take blue and black and make kind of a medium gray color on our palette, a medium to light gray color. You don't want this to be too dark. So again, I mixed a whole bunch of white with just a teeny bit of black, a teeny bit of blue, and we're just going to take that color, kind of dabble on the moon, different kind of clustered abstract areas. You can look at a picture of a moon and kind of mimic that. However, I'm just going to do just a few little blobbed areas, but leave the outer part without craters. The outer circumference or the inner circumference of that circle needs to stay bright white. And then we can take our white and go back and dabble over it some more. That creates different kind of color variations in your craters, but that's all you really need to do for this. We don't need it to be super realistic, super detailed. There's going to be a lot of other things going on in this painting. So then, if you want to, you can be really careful about this, but if you want to, you can take your round brush and sort of dry brush some more rings around your moon to create more of a glowing effect around the moon. And by dry brush, I mean you're using your round brush, you're loading it in the white, but then you're kind of wiping off your color so you don't have a lot of color. You don't want this to be opaque and solid and bright white and thick. You want it to be thin and translucent. And you're just doing very, very light colored beams around the moon. So see how I'm kind of wiping my brush off? That's because I don't want this to be super bright. I want it to be light, see-through. I'm just creating more of that glow around the moon of these kind of streaks. And I can even bring those out even further into some of the darker areas and let them just kind of fade out and disappear. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to switch my water out. It's nice clear water because I'm going to need that clear water for these stars. So I am using a toothbrush and I actually dipped my toothbrush in water. So that kind of helps get the consistency that we need for these stars. Do not do this until you've tested this out on another surface because I don't want you to kind of ruin your painting. If it's too watery, it's going to drip and be messy, and the water from the drips are just going to ruin your sky. But if it's too thick, it's going to be kind of globby and also probably not something you want. So test it out first. It needs to be kind of a fine kind of mist with the white. So a little bit of water on the brush, add the white. Sometimes I like to use my finger to add the white to the brush, and then flick the brush and you get the pretty stars kind of all throughout your sky. And next, I am going to find my horizon line because I painted over it, and that's okay. So I'm going to go locate my 5.5 and use a piece of chalk for this because it's a dark area. I'm going to kind of see it better with the chalk and actually redraw my horizon line. And we're going to paint the ocean next. So the ocean is turquoise blue and phthalo blue. We'll also be using a little bit of white in there to highlight it as well. But for now, let's just do turquoise and phthalo. And our clean, rinsed 3/4 flat wash brush. So we're going to double load that in turquoise and blue and define that horizon line. So I'm just going to take equal parts turquoise and blue. I'm just taking the end of my brush and painting that horizontal line across the sky. So there is the end of my ocean. And then I'm going to take this and start using the full width of the brush so I can fill this in a little bit easier. So we're really just kind of blending turquoise and blue on the canvas. We don't have to blend the colors all the way. If we don't blend them all the way, we get a nice pretty color variation of blue and turquoise. Take more turquoise, more blue, gently blend together, and see how you get kind of these darker streaks in there from that phthalo blue. It's kind of what we want. We want this color variation in the ocean. It's going to look dark for now until we add the highlight from the moon. Just want to make sure this horizon line is nice and straight. At some point, I need to define my shore. So I'm going to go down about 4 inches on the right below the horizon line. I'm going to draw this shore kind of curvy line, and it's going to dip down. So my shore is going down kind of at an angle so that everything above that line is going to be my ocean. Everything below that is going to start to be the sand. So I have that defined. I'm just going to paint the rest of the way down and fill that area in with the combination of turquoise and blue. I'm going to stop about halfway. So if you look on the left, I did about halfway of the shore from its deepest part. I'm going to start introducing whites. I'm going to take my white and blend it. So my water is now going to start getting lighter towards the bottom because it's getting shallower. I can take that white and actually kind of like use the end of my brush to do kind of left and right strokes in the middle area to kind of lighten that up a little bit. I'm going to lighten that up much more later with a different brush, but that's just kind of introduction to this. So that moon is reflecting, so that whole middle area is going to be lighter watercolor. And then, so the rest of this is kind of turquoise, little bits of blue, and a lot of white. So it kind of blends to a much lighter turquoise color on the bottom of the ocean. And it's much, much darker way in the distance. So again, we didn't really paint any super defined wave or reflection lines. This is just kind of our first layer of color. It's a little bit lighter right in the center. And we are going to kind of let that dry before we do anything else to the water area. I want to start painting the sand. So our sand actually doesn't have any brown in it. It's going to be black and blue because it's a nighttime painting. So I'm going to take my Mars Black and my 3/4 wash brush. I'm going to start at the very bottom. So with the sand, we're doing left and right horizontal paint strokes. I'm going to fill pretty much most of this area, but I'm not going to go all the way to the water. I'm going to stop at some point and then do blue. So this is black blended to blue at the top, phthalo blue. So we have blue and black sand. I'm going to do horizontal strokes. So with this blue, it's going to go all the way to the water. It's going to touch the water. And we'll be able to paint soft waves that are kind of going over this area later. So there should be a very, very distinct, it's light water and then dark, dark sand. The sand is black on the very, very bottom. It blends to blue towards the top. If you want, you can paint the sides of your canvas. So you can take that color and extend it out. Sometimes if I'm waiting for my painting to dry, I'll just use kind of leftover colors on my palette to use that to paint the edges while I'm waiting for the top part to dry. But you do need to kind of let this all dry a bit before we go on to the next step because it's going to be painting some soft waves and we really don't want it to mesh too much with the colors. I'm going to let it dry just a little bit and get my 3/4 wash brush all rinsed off. And we're going to be using our round brush again. Actually, no, we're going to be using our angle brush. So this is the 3/8 inch angle brush. And I'm going to use this brush to start painting the reflection in the water directly under the moon. If you don't have the angle brush, you can use the round brush for this step. I like this because it's got the the ends, that's going to help me create these thin lines. So our moon reflection way in the distance, just under the horizon line, are very, very thin, close together lines. And as we go down, we're going to create this kind of area that's wider where the moon is actually reflecting in that water. So we want to just kind of create this illusion that this moon is reflecting in that area over there. So that's why that gets super wide. Our paint strokes get kind of longer, brighter, further apart. And then as we work our way down in this sort of vertical direction in the water, our paint strokes are getting bigger and looser, further apart. Bigger, thicker strokes, pressing harder on my brush. So in the distance, we did very little teeny close together lines, and then they get further as we work our way down. Then we get to this area right here. So keep in mind, a lot of this is actually going to be covered up by our dock, so we don't want to spend too much time rendering that. I just took some white and kind of made it hug the shore a little bit. Over here on the left and the right of the reflection, we're just going to do some soft waves, these kind of like loose lines that kind of dip down a little bit, but kind of still go in a horizontal direction. And if we're working in the distance, these lines are smaller and thinner and closer together. So just little taps with the brush, really small. But I don't want to take away from that middle reflection, so that middle part should be brighter. There's not a whole lot of white lines on the left and the right. We don't want to lose the brightness in the center. I'm just doing a few more little taps with the brush in the distance, and a few more kind of bigger lines towards the bottom. And we can do some of our waves in this. So our water actually needs to go over our sand a little bit. And so I'm just going to kind of tap the brush to create these sort of soft waves that are going over my sand. I can take some of my turquoise and mix that so it's not super bright. So some of this is kind of going over, so that water going over my sand. So right here, actually that's not dry all the way. If it was dry all the way, it would have not mixed with that dark color. So I'm just going to take some of that white, just make it kind of dab it over the darker area. Keeping in mind, we're not doing this super detailed because the dock is going to be covering a lot of that center. And what we could actually do, so this is all that's going to be covered by the dock. We're not really going to see all that detail later on. We could always go back and kind of touch up whatever we see that's left over. Like right here, we're going to see, just take some of that, could go over, but we don't need to make it look super realistic because it's kind of in the background of our painting. Take some more down here. See how that just painting it over the sand area to make it look like that the shore is going over our sand. The next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of dry brush highlighting on the sand. And I'm going to take my 3/4 flat brush. I'm going to mix a light blue color. So you don't want to do this with pure white, but if you mix white with your phthalo to make kind of a light blue color, sort of that color that we used that's close to the moon to create the glow in the moon, and take your 3/4 flat and just very, very lightly on the left and the right side of the sand. You just want to use the full width of the brush to kind of drag this really light color in there. And leave the center part dark. That's going to be covered by the dock anyway, but just this very light highlight in the sand. And then next, you want to take pure white. I'm just dabbing, using the end of my brush to stamp these very bright white ends to these waves, just stamping it along the very end of the shore to create more of those soft wave lines that are kind of coming in. So some of this You can add some more little sea foam pieces. We still see that dark from the sand below it. I'm not doing this in the middle part of the painting, just on the left and the right. Maybe a few more streaks of that light color in the sand, and we can call this done. I am actually going to do some more splatters. This could have been a step that we waited for and done the splatters later, but I decided we need some more sparkle. So I'm going to take my toothbrush again. I'm going to splatter in the water as if the stars are reflecting in the water. And we have a little bit of sparkle on the sand as well, which is not a bad thing either. Just splattering that all throughout. And we need this to dry before we can go on to the next step. So the next step is drying our dock with a piece of chalk. We don't want to draw on wet paint, so let that dry and come back to this step. My dock is approximately 7 inches wide at the bottom. So you want to just do 2 angled lines about 7 inches wide. Keep in mind you want room for the poles on the dock and our tiki torches. And the nice thing about this chalk is it will erase. So you're just sketching your sort of trapezoid shape. It's going to extend, so the dock does go over our shore into the ocean a little bit. You can make yours further if you want. The width of my end is about 2.5 inches wide at the flat part at the top. My lines, my 2 diagonal lines on each side are about 6 inches long. So if you want to use those exact measurements, you can. You can also change it. You can also adjust it. It doesn't have to be the exact same size. So once you draw your dock shape, your trapezoid shape, you want to take your 3/4 flat brush in Mars Black and go ahead and paint that shape solid black. So don't worry about shading or color or anything else at this point. It doesn't really matter the direction of your paint strokes either. You're just defining that shape using the end of your brush to kind of draw your shape in, and then you're filling it in with solid black color. If you see any leftover chalk lines after painting this in, those will erase with a clean wet paintbrush later. You don't want to erase them yet because then you might smear your paint. So we're going to start adding some color to our dock, and let's load our palette with 2 different browns. I'm going to use burnt sienna and burnt umber. That burnt sienna is going to give our dock kind of a reddish color, and that burnt umber, just that kind of natural wood color. Rinse our 3/4 flat off, and you'll need titanium white as well. You also don't need to wait for, there's the burnt sienna, burnt umber, and titanium white. You don't need to wait for your dock to dry all the way. So if that black is still a little bit wet, that's actually okay and kind of preferable, so our black can blend with this to create our faux wood effect. Let's start with the burnt sienna color. So 3/4 flat, dip that in the burnt sienna, and we want to do horizontal strokes along our dock. And we want to just kind of do this blending combination of the 2 different browns and the white, and then we have our black base already. And when you do these horizontal strokes with your different browns and white, And you don't let it blend all the way. That's going to start to create this wood effect on our dock. Now, if your black is blending in way too much to the point where none of this color is really showing up, then I would suggest just kind of waiting for that black to dry a little bit further. But it should be kind of blending with it, but not over mixing with it too. The color should start to show up at this point. You see what's kind of happening. You can use the tip of the brush to outline the edge of that dock and then drag your paint strokes in a horizontal direction. So it's really important that we're using the full width of the brush and we're dragging it lightly to create horizontal paint strokes. That's going to make our wood look like it's going in a horizontal direction. Our wood grain is going in a horizontal direction. And we have this nice, pretty variety of color in that, and it already looks like wood. Dragging this very lightly, and then just gradually adding color on there. It's starting to get lighter and lighter. I still see black streaks in there. That's okay. We're not trying to get rid of all the black. That black was our base color. If you feel your brush is getting overloaded, you can wipe it off. You can rinse it. Start again. I am going to, so the moon is reflecting lots of light in the center. I'm going to take white in raw sienna or burnt sienna and white, and I'm going to add extra light color just in the center of our dock without it being too light. Just kind of blending this lighter color right in the center so it's lighter color. Don't worry about the black lines for like the in-between of the wood pieces. We'll be painting those black lines in a later step. Just taking some more burnt sienna, dragging that in. A little bit more white in the center, kind of blending that in. We don't want to over blend our color because then if we keep working it, it'll just turn into this big gray blob, and that's not really what we want. A little bit more. If you feel you need a little bit more black in there, you can blend more black, taking some of this burnt umber, kind of dragging that in there. So there is my dock. We're going to start painting the poles, the beams on the left and the right of the dock. And for that, I found it really helpful to use the T-square. So you just kind of line up your ruler to the edge so you have vertical beams. It's really easy when you paint these without the ruler that your beams might end up kind of swaying and going diagonal. So you just line that up to the edge of the canvas. I can still use my 3/4 flat. Same browns, there's like brown and white on my brush, burnt umber and white. The height of this wood beam pole thing is about 3¼ inches high. I can remove my ruler once I get that in, and I can make it thicker if I want. Just take my brush and kind of go over that and make it thicker. I'm going to use a round brush and paint like a little oval on top of it. I'm just making that thicker. If you want your arrows to be thicker than mine, you can make them as thick as you want. There's the first one. And then let's get some black. I'm going to do shadow and highlight. So the shadow part of this would actually be on the left side. I'm going to take the black, I'm going to paint just the left side with the black so that left side is dark. And then the right side would be lighter, where the moon would be hitting it. I'm actually going to take my round brush and get burnt sienna and titanium white mixed together. And on the very, very top, there's like a little oval at the top. And take that color and just kind of drag it down on the right. that have a little bit of highlight on the right side of that wooden pole. And we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side of the docks. I'm going to get my ruler. I'm going to make sure to wipe off the ruler because I don't want to add smudges to my painting where I got paint on the ruler. So I'm going to make sure to make the pole pretty much the same height. It doesn't have to be the exact same height, but pretty close to it. I'm going to line that up 3¼ inches high, my little initial line, and then I can remove my ruler and then I can make my pole thicker. And your titanium white or your highlight color would be on the left side of that, whereas the other one we did it on the right side. So the inside parts are light in color and then our outside part is darker. I'm using the round brush this time for that darker part, but it actually doesn't matter, whatever you feel more comfortable with. But the round brush is definitely helpful for that oval top part of the beam. And then you just want to kind of gently blend your white down in the direction of that wood grain. This wood is going up and down instead of left and right. So light color on the inside parts. And so we have 2, and we're going to do several more. We want these poles to get shorter in the distance. So I can take our ruler and just kind of find the vanishing point. So if it helps, you can draw your diagonal line, or you can just kind of take that. I made a little mark, so that's where the top part of my next one will be. Actually, you can adjust the angle if you want, but you can see how I get that next part, because that ruler hits the vanishing point. We can do the same thing on the other side too, or we can do that when it's time to paint that one. Then I can take my ruler and my brush and I can paint this next one. So hold it so it's vertical line up to where I made that little chalk mark. I can hold this way to figure out where that one will be. A little dot where that bottom part, a little dot right here. So I know where that one is going to be. So the height of that one. And I can line that up with the edge and do a vertical little mark. And then once I have that vertical little mark, I can make the poles thicker and I can add the little oval piece on top. So it's dark on the outside, light on the inside. Take my brush, do a little oval at the top, and then loosely do highlight on the inside of each of those posts. So each of our posts, as they go in the distance, they're not going to be as detailed. So because they're getting smaller, they're further away. I'm going to take my ruler, figure out where my next one will be, figure out where my vanishing point is, and then use my ruler to kind of figure out the height of that. 2 vertical lines. I can do another set. I'm actually I'm going to paint those ones, or I'll decide whether I want to paint those ones later. So if you want to just do 3 poles, you can, to keep it simple, or 3 on each side. Or you can do more if you want. And then you add more detail to the other guys. Darker on the outside, light on the inside. The ones that are on the bottom are slightly wider, thicker. Then I can take my round brush and do the little oval on the top. And then highlight on the inside. So then we can start, so if our middle part of our dock is dry for the most part, we can go back with black and start doing our black lines. So I'm going to do this rather loosely. I'm not going to make it super realistic and paint my black line all the way across and measure how far apart each wood piece is going to be. That would be very tedious to do. So I'm just going to take my round brush and black. And actually, I found it helpful if you watered down your black slightly. I'm going to rinse my 3/4 so I can set that to the side. So water down the black just a little bit is helpful for this to get lines that will flow easily. And just, I kind of did my lines on the edge of the dock, but I didn't paint it all the way across. Your lines do get closer together as you get further along the dock, and they are further apart towards the bottom of the dock. So that helps to create perspective in this. But your lines do not have to paint all the way across from one side to the next. Some of the pieces that are kind of closer to the bottom, you can kind of do some character in that, do like little knots in the wood if you want more of the wood grain that's kind of detailed, but you don't have to do that. I'm going to do the ropes next, and we are not going to be detailed or very elaborate about this. We're going to do these very loosely. So I'm going to take my raw sienna and mix white into it. That's going to make a lighter brown color. And I'm just going to kind of sketch these rope lines from one pole to the next, and then make a little kind of curvy stroke at the top for it tied around the pole. Just a little loose curved line that dips down and attaches to each of the poles. And again, this is done very loosely, and I can take this and I can paint this down and off the edge of the canvas and make it look like there's another pole that we don't see, another beginning of the dock that we don't see, and that just goes off the edge of the canvas. So that was done very simply. I'm not going to do texture on those or anything. We're just going to kind of leave it like that. I am going to do 2 more beams at the end of the dock to give it more of a finished look. So I loaded my paintbrush in brown and black. I'm not using the ruler here, although if you want to use the ruler to help those be vertical, you definitely can. So dark line. These are much shorter because they're further in the distance. Little oval at the top, and then attach those with the rope as well. Very, very thin, loose line. My dock looks rather old and rustic, which is kind of the look I was going for. Which means that if our dock doesn't look perfect, that makes it look even more rustic, and that's okay. So all these bottom beams I'm making just a little bit thicker, just to give that impression that those are bigger and closer. The next thing we're going to do is paint the palm tree palms in the upper left and upper right corner of our painting. We want to go ahead and load our palette with the color Hooker's Green Hue Permanent. I'm going to use the round brush for this. I'm going to start in the upper left corner, and I'm going to paint a diagonal line that goes from the corner and just kind of goes down, a little bit curved, and sort of just disappears in the middle of the sky. There's the middle of our palm. And then I'm going to take my green and do the little individual leaves. So I'm going to start from the center of that line, use the end of my round brush, and I'm just going to drag each little leaf outwards in a curved direction, all kind of pointing outwards. When you do this first layer, that green, it's going to look dark. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create some variations in this green. We have a couple different light sources in this painting, the moon, and we have the Tiki torches that could possibly be kind of reflecting on that. But anyway, we want to take our white and just kind of do this wet on wet blending thing with our white. So take our white and go over our green, or double load your brush in green and white. And it's going to create some much brighter, more visible lines in there. But we don't want all of our leaf lines to be that bright. So we want to create a nice variety of dark and light. And this is only one palm frond. We're going to do different ones. We're going to do some darker, shadowy ones. This one's going to be one of our lighter color ones. So when you're ready for your next palm tree frond, we're going to do the upper right corner, curved line. So this one, I'm actually going to make more of a shadowy sort of silhouette style palm. I have black on my palette, so this shows up really nicely, especially if we're painting the palm leaves over some of the sky that's brighter. That black is really going to show up and we'll be able to see the shadow. However, if we're painting it on the darker part of the sky, the shadow doesn't show up as much. So this is a combination of black and green. So I'm loading my brush in green, and then I'll go back and load it in black. So we have different variations of these little leaves. So again, we're just starting from your middle line, and you're just painting your paint strokes outwards and down, sort of releasing the pressure. So at first my brush is pressing a little bit harder, and then as I kind of stroke down, I release the pressure and our paint stroke gets kind of lighter and goes to more of a point. So then we can do another palm. So this one I'm also going to do shadowy, because especially since it's kind of going in this shadowy area. If you want to have some of it overlap parts of the moon, you can. Just be really careful, especially if you worked hard on your moon. You don't want to cover up what you painted. We still want that bright moon to be visible. But if there's some parts of the palm that overlap very closely to the moon, that's okay. So this was another dark, shadowy palm, and it is overlapping some of my lighter colored palm. So the pattern we're really kind of doing here is some palms are super, super dark, some light, and that really creates this pretty effect. And do another palm down here. So this is a darker area of the sky. If I did shadow silhouette, it's really not going to show up. So I'm going to do lighter color here with green and white. This piece is actually, the middle piece kind of went more vertical this time. So my palm leaves need to go in a different direction as well. They're kind of going outwards and down. So far, my palms are not overlapping any part of the ocean. That just happened that way. There's no reason why they wouldn't overlap part of the ocean. So if yours are going down and your leaves are overlapping the water area, that's fine. Let's do another piece. We can do maybe another dark shadowy one over here. It doesn't have to be symmetrical, so you don't have to have the same number of palms on one side as you do the other. Asymmetry is often a design choice in paintings. And even if we did the same amount of palms on each side, it could be that they're not the same direction or the same size. There's three, if there's three on each side, maybe there are two small ones, one big one, or vice versa. Going back and kind of touching up this lighter one, making the lighter one look like it's overlapping that darker one, and then redid the center line of the palm, making some of those pieces kind of go down. I am going to start working on the Tiki torches next. So you may notice my chalk lines are gone. When you erase your chalk lines, you want to just use a clean wet brush or a soft baby wipe to very gently remove the chalk lines. You don't want to remove any paint, and especially if the paint's not dry. You don't want to do that if the paint's not dry. That'll remove your chalk lines. And so for the Tiki torches, I'm going to kind of make this orangish brown color. So if I did the poles the same color as my dock, it's going to blend in too much and we're not really going to see the Tiki torch poles. So I'm using primary yellow with burnt sienna and white. It's going to make kind of this orange brown color. And the nice thing about these torches is they don't have to be perfectly vertical. So if we want our line to go kind of slanted, we can. I actually recommend kind of drawing your line with a piece of chalk first to make sure it kind of works well with wherever it is in your painting. It is taller than the poles of the dock, assuming it's kind of closer up in the painting. So I did a kind of a diagonal line that's going more towards the right, a little triangle on top of that, and a little rectangle on top of that. If you want to change the design of your Tiki lamp, you can. With the torch, you can kind of Google different torch clip art pieces. You can see different designs for it. I'm going for more of a simple design. So I did use my T-square, my ruler, to kind of get that initial line nice and straight. So this is that orangish brown color that we made. I'm just doing a thick line for the pole. And then I'm going to grab some black on my brush. And with the black, I'm going to do these curved lines. We'll do kind of a bamboo style pole. And then triangle. So I'm going to do that dark. And I can highlight that later. So black triangle on top of that. And then black rectangle on top of that. And then if we want to kind of highlight this already, we can take some of our orangish brown color, kind of add that color into that triangle. Although that triangle still kind of stays kind of dark, I can kind of add some shadow to my bamboo pole in some of the areas. So there's my first sort of simple pole torch for this lamp. And then I'm going to do the other one. And this one, so we talked about asymmetry earlier. We don't have to make this one the same height. We can even make it a different style if we wanted to. I'm going to make it the same style as the other one, but I'm going to make it so it's a little bit lower and it's going more vertical, although it is allowed to kind of go diagonal. It doesn't have to be completely straight or parallel to the poles of the dock. But this one that's also a little bit higher than the bottom dock pole, but a little bit lower than the torch on the left. So I'm taking my orangish brown color, doing the same thing, just painting the pole part first. Black for the little kind of notches in the bamboo pole. Paint a triangle on top of that. This area that I'm working in is a darker area of the painting. So to kind of combat that, we could add a little more white to the brown if we wanted to have that stand out a little bit better. So I did a rectangle shape on top of the triangle shape. And actually on both of those rectangles, I did a little tiny black kind of notched line. So that is where our fire is going to be. I'm going to go back with white and orange color here. I'm going to highlight this triangle. I'm going to take this, highlight that triangle, highlight the rectangle area with white, and rinse my brush. I'm going to start the flame for each of our torches. So for the flame, we're going to start with Cad Orange Hue. So load orange on your palette and use a clean brush, clean number 4 round brush. And the first thing we're going to do is paint a flame shape with solid orange. We will add highlight and brightness to the center of this flame later, but right now the first shape is solid orange fire shape. Both of those torches. So it's a little bit rounder at the top, kind of curves outwards, goes to little points on the sides and a little point at the top to make their little fire shape. If you want to, you can make your flame a little bit bigger. So before this dries, we're going to start highlighting our fire, our flame. So what we can do is wipe the brush off a little bit, grab your yellow, and in the center of each of your orange flames, add some yellow. So that yellow will blend with our orange and it'll turn more of like a yellow orange, but just in the center of it, but leave the outer parts orange. So center part yellow, outer part orange. You can do like a few little kind of small paint strokes with the yellow kind of sparking up above the flame. But that needs to dry before I can add even more brightness on our fire. So let's rinse our brush, and I'm going to do some more highlighting on the poles of our torches. I'm going to rinse my brush and add white to the brush. So on the inner part, for this one on the left side of the pole, I'm going to take my white and just highlight the left side of the pole. And that is going to help brighten that up, especially since it is in a dark area of the painting. You can see it better. I can even add white on the right side of the pole as well. So that I highlighted. And then let's do the same thing to this pole. This one I'm going to add some white and brown, white and orange brown to it. Add more of that white and orange brown to the right pole. I'm going to do this over here on the left pole as well. Just lightening this up. This one we actually didn't need to lighten up because it's going over a light area of the painting. So if we wanted to, we can actually darken that if we wanted more contrast with that pole. And add a little bit of lightness to the triangle. Kind of outline the edges of that with white. Outline the edge of this rectangle shape. Same over here, align kind of the edge of that rectangle shape with white. But we kind of are losing that because the waves behind that are light. So we could just outline that with black to help that to stand out better. Then I'm going to take my white and add more lightness inside the flame. So this is rinsed brush titanium white on the end of the brush. And in the middle of the flame, I'm adding little strokes of white paint just in the center. I don't want to lose the yellow. So just adding that white in the center of the flame, that really helps to brighten that up. I'm going to rinse and actually go back to the pole with black paint. Right here, I'm outlining the right side of that. So that stands out a little bit better. I'm outlining the left side of this triangle, rectangle area of the Tiki torch to give it kind of shadow on the left side of the pole. It also helps create a little bit of contrast in that area. Same with over here, a few little black lines in there. So now that I have the placement of my Tiki torches in, I'm actually going to decide to do one more palm kind of in this area. I wanted at least one palm that is overlapping my ocean area. So I'm taking my black and my green. I'm doing kind of a small palm with the leaves that are overlapping part of the ocean, but I don't want to overlap my Tiki torch. And I can kind of highlight that too as well with lighter green. color. The next detail I'm going to add to the painting is optional. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. I'm going to do some plumeria plants on the lower right and one on the lower left of the painting. I'm going to start with the leaves. I'm going to make kind of a yellowish green color on my palette. So I have yellow, green, and white. Just because this is a dark area, so I want to use that, especially that yellow and white, to kind of lighten that green so it stands out. I'm going to do this kind of array of plumeria leaves. They're kind of long, oval, pointed leaves. I did 4. Bottom 2 are really just kind of hanging off the edge of the canvas, and we can overlap the bottom part of our torch and part of the dock if we need to. So I'm just doing the leaves first, and the leaves will need to dry before I can do the flower part of the plumeria. And while that's drying, I decided I want to kind of add to my flame without really messing up the look. I wanted to make my flame a little bit bigger and a little bit higher. So I did a little bit more orange on the outer part. And then I do my yellow and white in the center. I took that white center and kind of brought it up a little bit higher. So my flame is going up a little bit higher and brighter. And then my leaves are still not dry in the lower right. So actually I'm going to add some small plumeria leaves in the lower left. So while that's drying, I'm going to do some sparkle in the water. So this is kind of fun. Adds a really kind of whimsical, magical effect. Especially since the moon is hitting the water, we likely would see these sparkles in the water. So to do sparkles in the water, I use my round brush in titanium white, and I start by just doing kind of little dots. This is just in the area that's under the moon. So little tiny dots kind of close together and some further apart. If you're closer to the dock, the dots might be bigger. If you're further away, they might be smaller. And then some of those dots actually turn into little stars. So you can take your dot and just kind of drag a very, very thin vertical line and a very, very thin horizontal line. Make a little plus sparkle in the water. And that's how you can create that glittery effect of the moon reflecting on your ocean water. I can also go back and kind of add to my little shore. So now that we know the parts of the sea foam / waves that we do see that are not covered by the dock, we can kind of touch those up if we wanted to. Another touch up that I'm going to do is add maybe just a few lighter color, yellowish color paint strokes in some of my palms, but not too, I don't want to take over too many, especially the shadowy ones. I like that some of those are dark and shadowy. It creates depth in my palms, but just a few kind of lighter paint strokes in there create that pretty color variation. So now that my plumeria leaves are dry, I can go and paint my plumeria flowers. Plumeria flowers are really simple. I'm going to take titanium white and I'm going to do 5 petals, and these are just rounded pointed ovals in each one. So I do one at a time starting at the top, and each one kind of slightly overlaps the other. So I'm going to do 5 petals going around, and these are really kind of smallish flowers in the lower part of the painting. Again, this is an optional step. You don't have to add these flowers, or if you love to paint flowers, you can add more flowers to this. So I'm going to do 2 on one side and 1 on the left. This bottom one is really hanging off the edge of the canvas. If you want, you can extend your petals to the edge of the canvas. And then I'm going to take orange paint, orange and yellow. So I'm going to double load my brush in orange and yellow. And I'm going to outline the edge of the petal. So the top edge of the petal gets outlined and then the top edge of, and it's going to go kind of in a clockwise direction. You do the edge of the petal on the same side of each of the petals, and it just kind of goes around on each of the petals, so you outline them. And then you do like a little orange dot in the very center of each of the plumerias. Very, very simple, very basic. I'm going to do a few more things to my dock. I can take black and maybe add a few more lines in there. I'm also going to add some of the orange yellow color on the dock too, to make it look like maybe some of the reflection of the fire is kind of highlighting parts of the dock. Also gives the dock a little bit more pretty color variation. And also, before I do that, so some of the edges of the dock I'm just kind of outlining with black. You don't have to outline the entire edge, but some of those edges, if you outline with black, it kind of defines the edge a little bit more. And then I'm doing some more shadow color on some of the poles. And going back over that darker. Remember, the shadow part is on the opposite side of each of the poles. And then a little bit of black on the bottom part of our rope. I know I said earlier we weren't going to detail that, but I just did a little bit of black just on the bottom part. Give the rope a little bit more darker color on the bottom. So then I'm going to show you how to do kind of the fire reflection on the dock. So using your clean round brush, you want to load it into orange and yellow. And orange and yellow are a transparent color, but you really want to make this kind of dry brush and see-through. We don't want to paint solid, thick orange and yellow lines on the dock. We just want it to look like reflection. You can even add a little bit of white to your orange and yellow and just very lightly kind of brush in some horizontal paint strokes with orange and yellow. Very, very lightly. Did this mostly just on the bottom part of the dock. Few more kind of dry brush strokes on the flame. And that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint tropical nights. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.